Vanny here. I am walking toward the city of Cincinnati, where I will be having an interview walk with Ali Kroner. Right behind me, this is the city hall. This is where the decision makers, where the decisions are being made for the city, for the good or for the worst, or for the good for the most part. So I'm gonna go see Ali Kroner. We're gonna walk, we're gonna discuss about all the initiative the city has going on and to make our city more resilient and better and things of that nature. So, all right, I'll see you shortly. Cincinnati. And Ali, would you tell us a little bit your journey, how you became where you are right now? As we are in Cincinnati, we can start with high school as well. Where you go, and how has been your journey to lead up to this moment?
Starting high school, huh?
Yes.
Okay. Well, you know, I'm kind of a classic Cincinnati story in that I grew up here, and I wasn't sure if this was the place for me. So I turned 18 and I was excited to leave. I had planned to go to school at Northeastern University in Boston, but decided that I wanted an adventure first and signed up to do a year of AmeriCorps out in New Mexico. So I bought a trailer out in Taos and did a year of work in the National Forests out there. Trail maintenance and fire control, community service. And it was also a year that I did a lot of reading. I made a goal to read a book every week. And I ended up reading a lot about climate. And started to realize that this would be the biggest pressure of our generation, our biggest challenge. So I enrolled to study psychology at Northeastern, but I changed my major and went to study environmental policy. So that's how I got started. And then I went to work for an environmental NGO that did a lot of the data behind public health. If you think about air quality and water quality standards, things like that. And then along the way became real involved in community in Cincinnati. So I grew to become president of Northside's Community Council. And we had a board that was sustainability minded. And we went for a handful of different grants and programs that focused on community scale sustainability initiatives. You know, things like simplest recycling in our business districts, and we did a lead for neighborhoods analysis to look at how the community could become more sustainable. But it really gave me a taste of how people and government work together to make change happen.
Right.
So then a role opened with the city's Office of Environment Sustainability that sort of combined the analytical side of my work alongside the community organizing and policy work of the community council experience. So I threw my name in the hat and thankfully landed the role, and it, upon personal reflection, really feels like a sweet spot for me.
Yeah. It's great for you, it seems like.
It combines the science and the policy and the people and the technology in this real complicated knot of challenges that we have to untangle. But I like puzzles. I like challenges. I like problems to solve, and there's no shortage here.
Leading up to your role, what has changed? Now you've been on the road. What is your perception before and now as being sustainability for the city?
Yeah. So I should say that I joined the Office of Environment and Sustainability. My role at the time was Sustainability Coordinator. And I was charged with developing our update to the Green Cincinnati Plan, which is our climate action plan,
Right.
how we will achieve our emissions reduction goals. I'm going to go one more here.
Yeah.
And I did that for a number of years. But today I serve as director of the office, and the team has grown pretty significantly. So we now have about 20 people
Nice.
working on these issues on behalf of Cincinnati. What has changed is a big question. And I think this is a body of work that's constantly changing, in that it's still an emerging science. And we have all of these models of how we are impacting the world, but they're becoming more precise. Now we understand how they will impact Cincinnati, how they will impact specific neighborhoods, sometimes even how we think about it will impact your house. And it's been a wild political ride. If you watch what's happened at the federal level,
Yes.
I mean, I don't want to talk too much about federal politics, but I joined the office in 2016. And then we saw the election of President Trump and his decisions
Yes.
around the Paris Accord at the time,
Correct.
and sort of the withdrawal of
Yes.
climate as a federal priority. But one thing that was really interesting in that shift is that cities stepped up. You know, I think when it became clear that this wouldn't be a federal priority, cities were experiencing these challenges, were faced with the costs. We're hearing from residents that this is a priority, and made moves. And what's interesting about it is, you know, the Paris Accord sets targets
Correct.
for decarbonization, but it doesn't necessarily tell how anybody to achieve it.
So it's a destination, no route.
So, yeah. So it's up to cities.
Correct.
You have the North Star. How do you get there?
Sure.
And a lot of the progress that's been made in the U.S. has happened at the city level.
Right.
There's a sort of a sweet spot that cities occupy, in that there's so many people who are being impacted by climate. So there's political prioritization. The economy is centered around cities. And there's typically enough political alignment in a city to come to action. So when you see where progress is really being made in the US, and I think that's probably true globally, on climate, cities are main characters. And then, you know, President Biden, I think he recognized that. And a lot of the Inflation Reduction Act was around supporting efforts in cities. So the last several years have really been structured around, for our team, structured around aligning efforts on the ground with opportunities for federal funding to really pick up the pace, scale, have bigger impact. And we have a lot of momentum right now, but we also have a lot of confusion as those politics shift again, and we try to make sense of our best next steps.
And the GCP, I know initially it was set up to go to 2020-50, then there's a shift to 2020-30, and now how with this policy change, what happened to it? We maintain the same calendar to reach the goal to 2020-30, or
Right.
what has been affected?
So the Green Cincinnati plan commits Cincinnati to carbon neutrality by 2050, but also establishes a near-term goal of 50% decarbonization by 2030. Nothing there has changed. That's still the mission of the city that's been adopted by council. We're still working towards those goals. You know, the strategy of how to get there, the tactics might change.
The commitment still standing.
Still standing, yeah. I mean, we're still pushing forward on some of the zoning reform that will add more density in the city. That's all happening. You're seeing Metro introduce bus rapid transit to help decarbonize transportation. You're seeing investment in vehicle electrification, both from the private market and the city's own fleet. You're seeing continued investment in renewable energy. We've had a lot of success with solar energy.
Yeah.
We now have solar on 40 of our city facilities. We have built 100 megawatts of solar that feed into the community here, and we want to do that again.
How much of that percentage has been feeding to the city so far?
What percentage of the city's energy is renewable?
Yes.
Well, so the way it works is we purchase renewable energy credits.
Correct.
For all of the energy feeding into the residential program. We now have 100 megawatts of our own solar that feeds into that as well through a power purchase agreement. That 100 megawatts of solar, I think, serves about 15% of the energy aggregation load. And we want to do more and more of that. You know, when we purchase renewable energy credits, that's signaling to the market our support for renewable energy, but often the energy is being produced in other parts of the country, and we want to produce it here. That's how you add jobs. That's how you add value to the local economy, add grid stability. So we are in active negotiation for our next clean energy projects.
All right. Yeah. Take a step. I know on the person in the past, you used to have an old Mercedes that you converted to buy your, and
So yes, some friends, neighbors in Northside and I started a biodiesel cooperative where we converted waste vegetable oil into a product pretty similar to diesel fuel, and we could power our cars on that. And it was a sort of a community business venture that was very exciting at the time and was a climate solution, also a business venture, right? I think with time it became clear that the future of transportation is electric, and we shifted gears. But thank you for that reminder, because that was part of my background that I glossed over. But it also speaks to the need for these solutions to work economically, and not only for affluent people.
Yes.
So a lot of our work focuses on climate equity, right? Acknowledging that climate challenges present differently from one community to another depending upon a whole number of factors. We have a report called the Climate Equity Indicators that looks at different socioeconomic metrics and different climate risks. You know, so you can imagine the person at the top of a hill has different risks than the person at the bottom of a hill during a storm.
Correct. Okay.
Right? So there's geography considered, but person with insurance has different risk than a person without insurance, the same way. And if you have money in your bank account, you react differently the same way. So there's different factors to consider, but a lot of our climate equity work has resilience in mind. We want to make sure that everybody is prepared to both endure and thrive in a future that we know will look different than the past. And as we make these investments to correct the challenges created by yesterday's solutions, how do we address them in a holistic way that both mitigates climate risk and invests in green jobs and high performance buildings in a way that saves money and invests in communities? So you ask about low-income households.
Yes.
You know, there's a whole variety of programs that we could point to that focus on climate equity. Actually, as we walk around, you can see the street trees, right? Street trees are actually one of my favorite examples of climate equity.
Yes, okay.
So Cincinnati is unique in that we have what's called a street tree assessment, where every property owner pays a little bit of money to help plant these trees and help maintain them. And our Parks Department administers that program and has now planted 85,000 trees. And they have a database, a GIS database of every tree, what species it is, and, you know, when it was planted, when it was maintained, and they can track how different species are doing, which is changing with climate change.
So those other are more resilient than.
But also, we know where we have tree canopy and where we don't. And so for a long time, there was a citywide goal of 40% tree canopy across the city.
Correct.
And there are tree canopy, these are brand new trees, brand new street trees. It's been the citywide goal, which we've achieved. When we do a flyover, we can see that we now have 43% tree canopy coverage.
Where were you early before?
That's been a gradual incremental increase. But there's a flip side to that story in that when you look at neighborhood by neighborhood tree canopy coverage, we have communities like Mount Airy that are, and I think it's close to 70% tree canopy, and then communities like over the Rhine, which were less than 10%. So when you think about climate equity and all of the benefits of street tree programs, which we can talk about, Parks Department recalibrated their goals to set minimum thresholds for residential communities. So now there's a goal that all residential communities should have a minimum of 40% tree canopy. And so as we, as a city, decide where to spend our resources, we focus on the communities that need it most to bring up that bottom. And I think that's a helpful example of what a climate equity program looks like. Because you can think about the same thing in terms of how we invest in energy efficiency solutions, where we install renewable energy solutions, how we can design programs to make sure the needs of our most vulnerable community members are addressed, which inherently helps protect all of us.
I know there's an element of community cohesiveness and how those things are being measured. And what are what are the benchmark that has been put in place to activism?
That's a great question, without an easy answer. But yes, social cohesion is a term that's emerging as a measure of one of the primary ways communities can prepare for any crisis. I think it was born out of the Chicago heat wave, where many people died, and from heat. I mean, it was sustained temperatures of above 100 degrees. And when researchers went back and said they evaluated who endured and who did not, where there were elevated health challenges, they did an analysis of which indicators helped a community survive or not. And they looked at poverty, and it didn't really demonstrate any correlation. They looked at presence of air conditioning and building stock, no strong correlation, but ultimately came to the determination that the best indicator of whether you endured that crisis was a measure of how well you were connected to your neighbors, how well you shared information, shared resources, worked together on a solution. So that's where this concept of social cohesion gained some traction, and it's more and more focus for urban climate work across the country. But how you measure it?
Yes.
I think it's still an area of academic exploration. Okay. We, in our climate equity indicators report, we did look at whether there was a community council in the organization, or a neighborhood business alliance, a community development corporation, basically some sign that neighbors are working together on solutions. But of course, that's an oversimplification and only tells us part of the picture. But one of the initiatives that I think is really exciting that builds on this is called Climate Safe Neighborhoods. Okay. This was work that was born out of Groundwork, Ohio River Valley, and Green Umbrella, and the city.
So local organizations?
Local community-based organizations. It started with a small grant from the National League of Cities to lean into community solutions. But the Climate Safe Neighborhoods model is basically a deep dive with community members to talk through the challenges the community is experiencing based on climate, and then collectively in a community build a climate resilience map. And one of the sure. So I think one of the important factors is, there's a lot of data. Yeah. There's a lot of data about climate change and community impact. But even with all of the data, the picture is incomplete. Okay. And making solutions happen isn't delivered from data alone.
So there's more to a story.
Right, for implementation. And I think there's a poor track record of governments using data only to develop programs that are intended to benefit communities that don't really stick. Like, they don't deliver the intended benefit, whether there's lack of participation in the program or the data gave a skewed perspective of what was really driving the challenge. Yes. There's many examples of failed programs. So to pick up where we left off, sure. All of this data is helpful, but it's incomplete. And I think one of the key missing pieces is the lived experience of the people in the community. And the idea that the people closest to the problem are also often closest to the solution. So the program actually pays community members as climate experts on the community impact.
Ambassadors on the local level.
Right. And so, over a couple of months, through ongoing engagement, you build this community resilience plan. You build on the ground ambassadors who have some expertise in climate and the local impacts, but also strengthen relationships between community members with community-based organizations, with city government, in a way that can build social cohesion, but also help elevate community needs for implementation. You know, whether it's street trees or access to food or bus stops, whatever it may be, the partners around the table can help make it happen.
So the initiative is to bridge the gap where the data does not tell the whole story.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And wow, okay, interesting. What are some of the success, that your office has, some of the wins that you've seen as manifest in the city level that you've seen your office preside over?
Yeah, we were just having a conversation about this. One of the things that can be a challenge is we are ultimately trying to reduce carbon emissions, and nobody can see carbon emissions.
The invisible, the invisible force.
All right, so we just completed our greenhouse gas inventory for 2023.
Mm-hmm.
So where we measure all of the carbon that we emit citywide. So not just city government.
Yes.
You, me, the businesses, the institutions, everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And since 2006, when we started measuring, we've achieved a 39.8% reduction. Right, so it's something we're really proud of and puts us on track to meet our 2030 goals and our longer term goals. But what helped us get there is the big question, right?
Yeah.
So I think there are a few factors. The biggest one is we are cleaning up our grid.
Okay.
Right, so
Changing. Okay.
we're changing how power is produced here. It wasn't that long ago, maybe 15 years ago, 95% of the electricity in our part of the world was produced from coal. And now that's below 40%. And still rapidly moving away from coal. Some of that has been replaced by renewable energies. Much of it has been replaced by natural gas. So that is progress, but not yet the transformational progress we need to see. So we are continuing to invest in clean energy solutions, which is the primary factor, right?
Yeah.
When we look at where all of our carbon comes from, about 60% comes from our buildings. So the more that's the natural gas,
Correct.
the heat, that's the electricity to power lights, internet, TV, all that. So the more we can provide carbon-free electricity, and alongside that, shift from natural gas to electrified buildings, the better our chances of meeting our long-term goals become.
So so what's the challenge between the renter and home ownership? How those tensions are facilitating the conversions? Or there is some sort of friction between the two?
That's one way to put it, yeah. So one of the things we measure is energy burden.
Okay.
Energy burden is the percentage of household income spent monthly on your utilities. And for low-income households, Cincinnati has one of the highest rates in the country of energy poverty. So when we ask what has caused that,
Yes.
I think first and foremost is the fact that we have such an old building stock, and so much of it went through a long period of disinvestment, right? As the city shrunk in population, buildings fell into decay. Now as we grow again, and these buildings come back online, in some cases there's been thorough renovation and they're now high performance buildings, but in most cases that's not true.
Correct.
So you have underperforming buildings. And then you mentioned this homeowner rental
Yes.
dynamic. I think we're at about, approximately half of Cincinnatians rent their homes. And the typical rental agreement puts the tenant in charge of the utility bill, but the landlord in charge of any improvements or maintenance. So if you play that out in your head, there's no economic incentive for a property owner to make an energy performance improvement to one of their buildings. It's called a split incentive. So this isn't only true of Cincinnati, it's true of many cities, but those two factors combined is contributing to this dichotomy. And so we're looking for solutions to address that split incentive, and we have a program called Warm Up Cincy that is experimented with a few different things. But some of the success has been through matching grants.
Okay.
So if you're a landlord and you rent to people at 200% below the federal poverty limit, then you can qualify for a matching grant of up to $5,000 for energy efficiency improvements in that unit, as long as you commit to rental stability for 3 years. If you are a tenant living below the poverty limit, you can approach us and we can do an energy audit of your unit. We can replace light bulbs and appliances, help deliver energy efficiency improvements. And then if you complete some basic training on energy efficiency in your home, help pay down any utility debt that you have.
Okay.
So the program has been successful and has helped more than 500 apartments.
Oh, okay.
However, we estimate there are 34,000
Holy moly.
in Cincinnati. So again, looking for ways to scale that impact with new policy solutions.
So the greatest leap is it technological or is it policy? In order, where is the saving grace will come from for the most part to reach some of those goals?
Both and. We need policy change, we need technology adoption, we need cultural behavior change. And it gets back to that knot of complexity.
Yes.
They all play together with each other. None of them happen alone. But I think it's pretty clear at this point that technology alone won't get us there. Right? Technology is actually a small percentage of the solution.
Right.
You need enabling policies, and you need ultimately people to adopt the technologies. So I think we are still counting on innovation. I think we're still in a space where there's some obvious things to do to achieve additional carbon reductions, but at some point they become harder. Once the low-hanging fruit are plucked. So technology can make that easier. In many cases, it can make it more affordable.
Yes.
Some of the carbon capture technologies are still in doubt, but if they were to deliver in a cost-effective way, could really help us in a huge way. And then, the energy space and the battery space is advancing pretty quickly. So if there were breakthroughs there, and there seem to be many on the horizon, it could really help us make leaps forward. But a lot of the stuff's simple. Maybe you heard about the connected communities policy work.
Correct.
So the number one urban climate policy is density.
Density. Okay.
This is a great example as a neighborhood. The closer people
Are living together.
live together and closer to where they buy their food and where they work and where they play.
The 15-minute city walk.
You got it, yeah. Same concept.
Yes.
The lower the individual per capita carbon footprint. So connected communities, I'm gonna pitch this, builds on the transit levy that improves funding for our regional transit authority, and looks at where we have our high volume transit corridors and removes some of the barriers to building density along those corridors. So if we can now add housing and address the housing shortage that's driving the affordability crisis, build with density in a way where you have high performance buildings, you know, the amount of energy required for one apartment in a 6-unit building is different than the amount of energy to power a single family home. It's much less. So to reduce energy costs and encourage housing and business along these transit corridors where public transit is the means of choice for getting around, you can see how all these things help improve cost of living and address the climate crisis. And it's kind of a simple idea in the end. I mean, there's complexity to it, but it's not some wild technology. It's just thinking about the basics. And you know, I think it's important to recognize that since the 1950s, Cincinnati and so many other cities have been built around cars.
Yes.
how to move cars through the city. And that framework has started to reverse in the last probably 10 years as you see cities focusing on walkability and pedestrian safety and density. When you have more cars than you have people, and you have more, you know, 4 or more parking spaces per car, you just think about the value of the city real estate,
parking space,
the parking spaces devoted to that car lifestyle, and that's not highest and best, right? There are more valuable ways to use valuable urban property. So Connected Communities attempts to do a lot of that. It adds that density along those transit corridors, encourages mixed-use development, eliminates some of the parking requirements that are associated with new construction. So it will take time before we see the changes, but changes the DNA of the city in a way that will help us take steps forward.
What city are sort of a model for you that you aspire after that reach some of those goals?
So one of the fun things about urban climate work is that all of the cities are eager to share what's working. It's all open source. You know, it doesn't matter what we do if you don't do it too.
Okay, nice.
You know, if we achieve carbon neutrality and nobody else does it, it was for nothing.
Universality, okay.
Yeah, so we talk with other cities all the time. And there are different cities who have done different things well. You know, I was just in Minneapolis. I think they were early in these zoning conversations, thinking about how zoning can be a climate policy tool. They've done great work with bike infrastructure, but they're also very flat. Right?
It's much easier.
You know, Columbus is doing really great work around vehicle electrification. They are ahead of us. They receive some major support from both private philanthropy and the federal government to advance that, and they are now a leading example. Cuyahoga County is doing really interesting work around city-led microgrids. Microgrid developments.
Microgrid, okay.
Yeah. Ann Arbor, Michigan, both passed a climate assessment so that residents voted to pay into a climate fee, but they're also creating a sustainable utility alongside the investor-owned utility. So in different categories, different cities are leading in different ways. But I think if you interviewed other cities, Cincinnati would be named as a city doing interesting stuff too, right? So both taking inspiration from other places, but trying to lead by example as well.
And what gets you excited right now? What are some of the opportunity that is exciting your office right now? And you can't wait to see the implementation of it.
Oh, there's so much. I get so excited I like wake up at night thinking about the work we're doing. So one of our new programs is called Seeds of Change.
Seeds of Change.
Yeah, and it's building on that concept that community members have great ideas and great solutions. They just need a nudge to make it happen.
Okay.
So it's mini grants for community climate solutions. And we've now funded 68 projects around the city. And I like it for a variety of reasons. You know, we already talked about how you can't see carbon. These are projects you can see that communities are invested in and making it happen. And it's building green workforce, climate champions, advocates at the community scale. So have funded 68 projects. We're actively selecting our next batch of projects, but seeking to invest $1 million in solutions that emerge from the community. Like, it can be community gardens, it can be solar panels, it can be bike infrastructure. It takes so many different shapes depending on the community. But one of the more complicated projects we're working on right now that I'm really excited about is we have an old landfill that the city owns that has been a dead zone, right? Like there's been so many ideas pitched, and once you think about the geotechnical complexity of a landfill and the settling that's still happening and the methane release, it's just not good for so many purposes. So right now we are actively looking at turning these 65 acres of dead zone into solar farms inside the city.
Wow.
And these solar farms could feed power into the neighboring communities. So these communities that have had this eyesore, environmental justice, stinky site next to them,
Right, okay.
can now have a community-owned asset that helps reduce their energy costs and helps the city turn this into something economically valuable. So we haven't done it before, but if we pull it off, it could be a model for some other sites that we have, some other brownfield sites that are difficult to activate.
That's beautiful. I know Cincinnati was named one of some of the happiest city to live in. But what's the magazine? Yeah. For people who never been to Cincinnati or Aspire, what would be your pitching point to invite? What are some of the exciting things that's taking place in the city that they can come after?
I think there's something Goldilocks about Cincinnati. The size of it is big enough that there's always something interesting, but small enough that you can get to know it and know the people around you and develop a real sense of community. You can have an impact and influence in a space that you want to plug into. Like it's not people are accessible, happy to talk, happy to meet you, happy to talk about your ideas and how to make them happen. And I think I've taken it for granted for a long time being native here, but the level of investment in the cultural arts is world class. I mean, you stick your head up and you see the murals as just a small example of the type of investment and the way that manifests, but you can go to world class ballet, symphony, pops. Now you see the Blink Festival, which is unlike anything I've ever seen anywhere else. A lights festival, a series of light installations across the city.
Okay, nice. And earlier you mentioned about behavior change as well. I know the city is not what are some of the partners? Because I know you guys are not tweaking behavior. What are some of the exciting partners you guys have in order to kind of nudge mixing the policy, technology, and behavior together? So what are
we have so many partners. We've called them Green Cincinnati champions in the past. Basically, when you look at our Green Cincinnati plan, we have 130 different strategies to meet our long-term goals. And we've been blessed with partner organizations who are willing to put their name down next to different items to help make them happen. And I don't know what the latest count is, but probably 50 or 60 different organizations that have stepped up to help implement. I'm trying to think which examples to even highlight. I mean, the zoo is a pretty incredible one. You see the work they're doing. Right now, they have the largest solar array inside city limits, making giant strides. They've invested in very innovative water capture technology at the zoo. We haven't talked about it, but storms are our big climate challenge. And we're coming out of a historic storm right now. So it's the first day of sunshine in I don't know how many days. We could walk down the river and see how high it is. But they've approached climate with an ingenuity and innovation that is amazing, on top of being a cultural institution where they can help tell the story. And it's not just data. Like they draw you in and make you feel invested in the mission too. Green Umbrella is one of our most important partners. What's interesting about U.S. climate work is a lot of it is happening in cities, but that as soon as you leave the city, it's hard to find anybody talking about it. And Green Umbrella recognized that. Which way?
We can go
okay.
Yes.
Recognized that and has built out what they call a climate collaborative.
Correct.
Where they're working to help smaller municipalities, counties, townships take, in some cases, their first steps towards climate action, but understand the implications and the opportunities in front of us. And that has really helped stoke a wildfire of interest. Both in order to address climate, but also save money, right? The price of energy is going up. The cost of these storms is increasing. There's enormous opportunity to save operational dollars by investing in energy efficiency solutions. And there are federal policies right now. I hope some of them remain in place that really accelerate that. So Green Umbrella has been a key partner in some of the behavioral change across the region. They're also home to the 2030 district, which is a voluntary commitment of corporate and institutional partners who have signed up to say they will achieve a 50% decarbonization by 2030, reducing emissions, water, and energy consumption 50% by 2030. So when we don't have a clear mechanism to regulate decarbonization, to have these good actors in the private sector, it's hugely helpful. They understand the market value of these improvements and are leading the way. I think about Fifth Third and all of I think they were the first Fortune 500 to achieve 100% renewable energy, headquartered here. Kroger's doing their zero waste, zero hunger initiatives. Procter & Gamble's pioneering zero waste manufacturing. So some of the big corporate players here are doing serious leadership in the space, even when there's no one demanding it. It's market forces or their own mission, which is hugely helpful to have those types of leaders.
So it seems like there's some parallel between the carbon itself is invisible. Is the work itself also that is taking place is also invisible? What kind of work?
It's a challenge. It's a challenge to put it in front of people in a way that they see and feel. I was just having a conversation about that before I met with you. And there's lots to show for it, but you don't necessarily think about it in a climate context. You know, most people don't see the street trees and think that's a climate solution, right? They think those flowers are pretty, or thank you for the shade on this hot day.
Yes.
And you know, there are improvements to the bus system, but I think we still need more people to get on the bus to experience those improvements.
Yeah.
We're helping reduce energy costs, but energy costs are still going up, right? So
it's counterintuitive a little bit.
Well, we've helped decrease the increase, which is not an easy story to tell.
Yes.
But it could be much worse.
Yes.
But I mean, I'm thankful for conversations like this, which I think help make some of the stuff more noticeable, more tangible, more visible, and make you think about it in a different way, because the storytelling is such a critical component, and we're just not doing it well yet. We're not doing it as well as we could. We have leaders on city council, the mayor, who are excellent with the storytelling. I'm thankful for them. How are you? But it's something we're still working on.
So there's more. Yeah. Okay. So the storytelling is also to bridge the gap between the unseen work the work is taking place.
Yeah, but also to communicate a sense of hope and momentum. You know, a lot of these efforts are working, and they are making an impact. But it's not always easy to see how they weave together and what is causing the impact. So, would welcome your thoughts on how to do that better.
Yes, and for last message for any Cincinnatian, how can they participate? Like, if they haven't been involved quite to push the GCP initiative, how can they be more involved? How can they participate? What kind of the first step they can take on the behavior or participation route? Some of the suggestions.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people think it doesn't matter what I do. You know, the big companies, the big corporations, the government, they're making the decisions. As an individual, it doesn't matter. And I think that is fundamentally wrong. I think actually there's more to be done by individuals and the impact of collective action. And it starts just with sort of simple day-to-day decision making. And we all have a carbon footprint. Everything we do has some climate impact, but you have decisions in front of you that can either increase or decrease that. You know, whether it's the lunch that you ordered today, if it's in carry-out packaging, or you're dining in, whether it's a high carbon diet, if I think about beef or lamb, or a low carbon diet, if we think about eggs or vegetables. Most of us drive cars. Is your next car an electric car? Or are you going back to internal combustion engine and contributing to the emissions still? Your next furnace, will it be a heat pump, an electric heat pump, or will you go back to natural gas? So all of these little incremental decisions that we make scale up over time. And I think the more we can focus on that and making better choices along the way, the better our chances of achieving any of our goals of the Paris Accord or our carbon neutrality goals are. And the better off financially we are as well, right? These are decisions that help save money today and over time. So I invite people to think about their lives through that lens. And you don't need to be full-fledged climate activist to make much better choices that contribute to huge collective impact.
All right.
All right, Benny.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.